What's going on, everybody? Back again for another episode of Sunday Reset with Will and Friends. And today I am welcomed by Brandon Violette. Brandon is a screenwriter and show creator who's worked across Disney, DreamWorks, and Pixar. He's the co-creator and head writer for Cocomelon Lane on Netflix and hosts the Story Series, a podcast for writers who break the rules. See, I can't even get my own words right. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Hey, well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
No, it's an honor to talk to a fellow writer in this sense. And so I want to actually, obviously one of the first things I knew about you outside of the podcast was Cocomelon Lane. And so I got to ask prior to that, like, was screenwriting kind of always the dream for you? Like, how did you fall into that?
Yeah. So one of my earliest memories as a kid was Rocco's Modern Life, the show on Nickelodeon. If you're familiar
Yeah,
with that. So I was like
I'm
a
familiar.
90s Nickelodeon kid and so I fell in love with that show and my first love was drawing. It was all art because that's what I saw. And they would show these like making of featurettes in between like during the commercials. And so I got to see like behind the scenes of and that just stuck with me. So ever since that moment, I was into comic books and cartoons. And then as I got older, realized I was a mediocre artist at best, and kind of came through screenwriting and then fell into kids TV kind of by accident. But those seeds were kind of always there.
Yeah. And so the seeds were always there. Did you already like have a concept in mind, or were you just a blank canvas kind of going into it as a profession? Like how did you end up falling into this lane?
Yeah, I in I went to community college and
Mhm.
fell in love with filmmaking and like film production 101, screenwriting 101, and I was really into movies. And so I was kind of learning, and I'm sure now if you take a screenwriting class, they'd probably teach you about TV because TV is like where everything's at now, but
Oh
it
yeah.
was
I
still
mean,
movies back
that's where
then.
all the best content.
Exactly, exactly. So this was still movies, and animation was not even on my radar because I kind of assumed animation you had to be able to draw, and they didn't really talk about animation. So it was screenwriting. So I was writing a lot of like feature screenplays just on my own, and I was really trying any genre. It would be a romantic comedy, it would be a historical, it would be anything just to try things. And it wasn't until my first job as a PA basically on an animated show that I was exposed to animation, and I kind of fell back in love with it again reading the pilot script for my very first show that I was ever on. So it was really like it wasn't until I was exposed to it that I was like, "Oh gosh, like I didn't know I could do animation like this." And yeah.
It's interesting because the world of entertainment has always fascinated me from a career perspective for this reason, which is that it's still one of the last like true ventures where it's like you really have to like earn your way in. And you use the term you are a PA. So for those who don't know, like what's a PA?
Yeah, production assistant. So you're just it's an entry level position on a show, and you're, at least for an animated show, you're kind of touching every department. You're helping out the head writers. You're helping out the storyboard artists. It's like you're kind of everywhere, and that's how I learned the animation pipeline.
Okay. And so I mean, I have to think, you have these big ideas, you go into it. So what's it like starting out as a production assistant? Like when there's like greater aspirations of your writing and creativity that you want to do. Like how do you navigate that?
Well, it's funny. So right before that, so my first job uh, was at Hasbro Studios. You know, Hasbro, they do Transformers, they own GI
Oh yeah.
Joe, they do everything. Toy company, they do feature films, and of course they do animated shows. So before I got that PA job, I was hired at Hasbro Studios as a temp. And a temp, for people who don't know, is like temp is short for temporary. You're just there for maybe a few months, and filling in as an assistant for this person or helping out whoever you can. And that's how I got in the door there. And I was like delivering mail and stocking like the executive's fridge with like Perrier, like whatever. But I was also meeting people all day. I was kind of everywhere all day. And eventually,
Right.
you're a familiar face, and people are like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" They would kind of joke, and I said, "Well, I want to write," and so people would kind of push me and say, "Hey, you should talk to this person, and you should talk to this person," and so maybe about 6 or 7 months into that temp position, the show Stretch Armstrong got greenlit. And Stretch Armstrong, it's this toy from the 90s, like this wrestler
Mhm.
that it's kind of rubbery, like body that you stretch, right? And they were rebooting the toy as like a kid's Saturday morning style superhero show. And so they were uh, signed a deal with Netflix to make 26, I think, episodes of the show. And it was just getting going. And they're like, if you want to write, you should interview for that show and this could be your shot. And so I did. And that's really what kind of got me my career going in a lot of ways. So it was a dream. It's like you're the lowest position on the show, but it was an absolute dream.
So you're the lowest position on the show. You finally get your quote unquote your big break.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, was that validating in some way, or was that like, oh no, by now I'm like, I earned this. I got, where are you at?
Ah, yeah. Was it validating? It was. I felt seen because early on,
Okay.
the head writers, like it was like my first day on the job, and they took me to lunch, and they said, "You should always be writing because there might be a time that we call on you to write one of the episodes." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, okay." Because when you're starting out, you want to tell everybody what you want to do, right? And you want to get that thing that you really want tomorrow, but you have to be patient, but you also want to make sure that people know what you want to do. And so because they called it out and I felt seen, it removed this pressure of like, do they know that I really want to write and all that? It took all that away. And so I could just focus on being the best PA that I could, knowing that like, okay, they know what I want to do. So hopefully one day I'll get called on to write an episode. And then later in the season, I did. That was like my first official writing credit was on that show.
Was that really, I gotta ask, I have a side question I want to ask after that, but was that just amazing when you saw like your name next to a credit for the first time?
Yeah, yeah. So in animation, you wait like 2 years to see your name on screen. Like that's how it goes. So by the time you see your name, you're already hopefully on the next job. But that in my office right here, I have a framed uh, copy of the cover page uh, with my name on it and the episode number and the people that were on the crew. They signed it, so I'm looking at it right now. It's hanging on the wall in a frame, and that means a lot because that's quote unquote when you become a professional writer is when you get a paycheck for writing, and it's like, oh my
Sure.
gosh, and then you're like, can I do it again and again? Like, how does someone have a career out of this? But in the moment, I mean, it's a special thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can remember holding my book in my hand for the first time, and before anyone ever bought it and stuff, but just physically holding this thing. And granted, you've been working on it for however much time, but to physically say like, I like, no pun intended, willed this into existence,
Yes.
and you're just like, holy crap, it's here, it's real. No one can take this from me. Like I did this, and it's such a weird, gratifying thing. And I think every creative feels this way. And so was that? I mean, what was was the seeing the credit, or when did that moment happen for you?
The moment that they asked me to do it was the moment
Okay.
that I felt like, oh wow, because then I knew I'm going to have my name on a script. And then from the script, I'm going to see
Yeah.
my name on screen. It's going to say written by and then my name. And it's like, oh my gosh. And so it happened right away. It was like, whoa, and people at the studio were really happy for me because they remembered. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I was just the guy that was delivering mail. And so it was like, hey, you got your first writing credit. Like, congratulations. Like, it was a really cool, special thing. And then, of course, the
Yeah.
work. You have to write the script, so you hope it's good, and
Right.
they ask you to do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking about the people being excited for you. I mean, because I want to touch on this too, because I think this is, not everyone can maybe identify with a writer, but those listening everyone I think can identify with that feeling of, I know I want this thing, but right now I'm in this place, and where I want to get to is here. And so can you talk a little bit about what it's like to like tell people what it is that you're ambitious about without having any sort of fear or any anxiety about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I I tell people to, in the case of writing or acting, or if you wanna be an artist, drop the, aspiring writer, or I wanna be a writer. Drop that qualifier and say that you are that thing, and it's important to validate yourself first, always, like and I think so often that we outsource that validation to other people, and then, oh, if they say I am, good, because I secretly hope I am, but he said it, and so I could believe it now, and that's dangerous territory. Um, and so I think that's the number one thing, is to validate yourself first, and then the second thing to get there and to walk in that direction is you should be as clear as possible about what you want when people ask you. And if you don't know, it's okay to be honest, but I find that obviously you don't do it alone. People want to help you, but they need to know how, and they don't have time to figure you out. So if you can be as clear to, hey, this is the path I want to go down, then I find people are generally more than happy to say, hey, you should go talk to this person, or hey, here's some advice, and kind of push you in that direction. But they have to know where you want to go.
Exactly. Well, and you touched on another piece of this earlier, which is that they said always be writing because you never know when we're going to call on you for something. So can you talk a little bit about that mindset? Because like you're doing a job that like you're getting, this is what you're actually getting paid to do. However, what you want is right there for waiting for you, but you got to do it kind of in the off time. But you got to always be ready because you never know when you're going to get that chance. What was that like?
Yeah. Welcome to entertainment where you're spinning plates for a living, and you're working and getting paid, hopefully some job, and then you're also working and not getting paid. And that's the part that no one sees until you're hopefully called on and you're ready. But that, like you said, like that mindset is crucial. Of you have to kind of practice in the dark, so to speak. And there's no other way to kind of glamorize it. You just have to do it. And hopefully the people around you will call on you sometime to do
Yeah.
it, but yeah, yeah, and live up to their word. But yeah, there's no other way. You just have to do it. You just have to sit and, practice in the dark.
Yeah, it's interesting because I recall Seth Rogen being on a podcast recently. I think it was the Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, and he was talking about success in Hollywood and all of that. And he said, "Look, I've been extremely lucky, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I haven't been. And here's the problem." He goes, "If you quit, I can guarantee you won't make it. If you keep going, I can't guarantee you will, but I can guarantee if you quit, you won't. That's the only guarantee in this. So you have to just keep going." And I found more often than not, so many people, great, talented people, quit just before it was about to click for them. But at a certain point, it wears you down. And so it's easy to sit there from a place of success and look back. But I do think the hidden power that anyone can have, again, no matter what your dream is and what you're trying to accomplish, there's something to be valued in being able to say, I'm going to do prolonged effort, never knowing what the outcome is going to be. But it's so important to me that I keep doing this work. And then we'll see what happens on the other side. Because we get so focused in the outcome. And it's just like, you'd have no idea what that's even going to look like or if it's even possible. But nonetheless, you still have to start somewhere and try. And you'll damn sure never get there if you don't start from the beginning. So I love that kind of messaging from you of like, you waited for your shot and then it finally worked out. You finally got your shot. And how did that go?
It was incredible. It was, I remember it was a holiday weekend, and so I had like an extra day to write the script, and I just remember
Nice.
sitting there at my desk, and I was so lit up by it, and I had more anxiety and kind of self-imposed pressure before starting it, because you kind of wonder, well, okay, I got it, but am I going to be able to execute? But in the moment, I felt prepared, and I knew the show, because as a PA, I'm reading every script that goes to the network, and I'm seeing the head writers and how they make their changes, and so I'm learning the language of the show. So I felt ready, and I was hooked. I just hoped I got to the chance to do it again, and hopefully, and again and again. But I loved it. I loved it.
And there you go again. You touch on something else that I think is so important. I think in today's world, especially in social media and all this, we see we put on a pedestal the idea of like the overnight success, the person who goes that one viral video and such. But I think what people miss a lot of times is that like those are anomalies. Those are statistical outliers that are very, very difficult to ever replicate. More often than not, it's what you just described. You were ready for the moment because you had put in all these reps. You had seen all these things. And I get it. It's not glamorous to anybody hearing your story and going, well, I want to be a writer, but I don't really want to be a PA. you know? And it's like, it's not about being a PA, but you got to see all the ins and outs, all the different things. So when you finally got your moment, you're amazing. You're ready to go. I imagine it like if you're trying to be a professional public speaker, right? And everyone's like, okay, I want to get a TED talk, or they want to get that big, massive stage at the big conference. Well, what if someone just actually handed that to you and you've done no speeches, you've never done anything outside of maybe a few small things here and there, and then they actually hand it to you? How would that go for you? It would not go well. I would be imagined for most people. Maybe you're a
Yeah.
natural, but more often than not, you need those reps along the way. You need those smaller venues. You need your way of working. In the stand-up comedy world, they do the same thing. You don't just get Madison Square Garden.
Right.
You have to start with the small clubs or the open mics at a brewery, and no one's really paying attention, because that's how you work on your craft. So would you consider yourself a master of your craft now, or do you still feel like you have a lot to learn?
Ooh. Not a master. Always the mindset of a student and of a learner. Um, but I've been lately in a mode of teaching, and not teaching
Okay.
like school, but teaching through the podcast and talking to classes and things like that, where I have enough that I can impose and share my experience with others, but there's still a long way to go. And I think chasing mastery is the goal. I don't know about ever arriving at, because I don't think you ever arrive, but you continue to do the thing. Um, but yeah, and what you said too about that being prepared, which is so important, is yeah, before that, from the moment I said I wanted to be a professional screenwriter, it took about 10 years to get my first
Yeah.
paid script. And then another 2 years.
Wait, hold on, real quick.
Yeah.
Pause, everybody. Anybody
Yeah.
who's listening to that, that was not a misnomer. No, 10 damn years. I
Yeah.
mean, hold on. I mean, that just that blows people's mind. Again, in today's world where people are blowing up overnight and this song out of nowhere. And because I think people miss that. People miss that part of even the person that's overnight success, because you just now heard of them. You have no idea what took years to get to that place where they were finally that good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like 10 years to be a beginner in some ways, because you write your first script and you're a beginner, but a professional beginner because you got paid. And
Sure.
so it's like 10 years to start, however you want to phrase it. And then it was like 2 years to get script number 2, and then a month for script number 3, and then was a full-time staff writer at that point. So it started to happen quickly after 10 years. And so I tell people that to kind of illustrate that timeline, and it's like, yeah, sometimes that's what it takes.
It takes 10 years, and maybe it takes
Yeah.
20, or
Yeah.
maybe not. And it goes back to the point. Like, you have no
Everybody's
idea how
different.
long this is going to be different. Maybe it is for you, your first thing, you do the first amazing script and it goes nuts and everybody's happy, but you just don't know. But you damn sure won't find out if you stop anytime soon. So, but you touched on the idea of now you're teaching and now you're at a place where you can kind of do that because you're the head
Mm.
writer
Yeah.
on Cocoa Lane. So
Yeah.
what was that transition like, going from professional beginner into I'm now the head of writing?
Yeah, that was a huge leap, because now suddenly I'm getting, and at the time, because the show is wrapped, but at the time, getting writers reaching out to me the way I would reach out to other writers. And it's like, oh, whoa, I'm in this position where I have the ability to hire people. And now I'm evaluating work. And how do I decide between this person and this person? And so you're developing standards, and you're making mistakes, and you're trying out this person, and then hiring and all that. So it was, I mean, it's surreal, and just the biggest learning experience you could ask for, being on the other side, you know? Yeah.
Do you feel you have a bit of empathy, at least at this part, because you're not all that far removed from where they were at?
Yeah. Yeah. You realize, how, I mean, the career goes up and down. Like, I know people that have been a head writer. I was a head writer on 3 different shows, 2 shows after Cocomelon Lane, and now I'm a staff writer on the show Cars Lightning Racers for Disney Junior, which is in production, so it won't be out for a little while. But there's only like two positions for writers in animation. It's staff writer or head writer, and then hopefully it's uh, executive producer or showrunner, but really it's staff writer or head writer. So you're going up and down, and that's normal. And so you see, oh, this showrunner who is in between jobs is reaching out for a freelance script, and this up and coming writer who just got out of college, who's just like me, wants their shot. And so you have to. People are at all different places in their life and in their timeline, and so you try to make all those considerations. Yeah.
And so or I guess how have you evolved as a writer in this whole process?
Mm. So the biggest way I think I've evolved, because it's always hard. Every script is hard. It's never, but that's fun. There's fun in the challenge. But every script is, if it's ever easy, then I think you're doing something wrong. But I think where you evolve, or at least I have professionally, is that I allow myself to write badly, knowing that the improvement is in the rewriting. That cliche we've all heard, writing is rewriting. Well, that there is no better phrase that sums up the professional than writing is rewriting. And so as an amateur, and you wrote a book, so you could relate to this, like just when I was starting out, I was so afraid to put any word down on the page or a sentence that wasn't perfect. And so it was slow. It was very slow. And then but you realize that the process is getting to the end and then going back through it, because especially in screenwriting, it's all about real estate, because it's 1 minute per page approximately. So you don't have time to deviate from the story that you're writing. And so you need to know how long certain scenes are, how what the ending feels like. And there's so often, and a common mistake in up and coming writers is like the first half is like perfect, and then the ending, and then like the second half of the act two is very fast, because all their time was spent perfecting the beginning and the opening and the first half, right? And so they don't leave any time to do the ending, and everything feels rushed. And so you need to just get to the end and then go back through it. And so I see you like nodding, like you can definitely relate to that.
I'm kind of laughing as well, because I was quite literally having this conversation with my father last night about texting. I said, we were talking about just he's a musician on the side, and so that's how we relate to each other through music, but also like the creative aspect. And I was telling him, I was like, the hardest part of being a writer on any level for anything is staring at the blank page. You're
Yes.
staring and there's nothing there. And you encapsulated what I said to him last night almost verbatim. I was like, I think you just have to start writing. Well, most people chases that perfection. They think
Yeah.
any word is like etched in stone. And so suddenly, when you let go of that idea that like it's gonna be bad, but you just need to get into the groove, or like I think what the kids are saying now is flow state.
Oh,
You get into that flow state.
yeah. That's
But it's like
valid.
for real though. It's a
Yes.
real thing. Like you have to start.
Mhm.
You just have to. When I first started getting into writing as a more of a regular part of my life again, when I started my blog years ago, it's kind of a running joke. Um, but I would have this concept in my head. I'd be thinking about something, and then I would sit down one night. I'd usually pour a glass of bourbon, and I'd sip, and I would write. But every blog post is everything I wrote that night. And then the next day I would like clean it up a little bit if there's like grammar, but then I would post it.
Yeah.
And I saw it as myself like kind of like getting all the junk out of me. It was therapeutic in a way, but it was also like I'm getting my reps in being
Yes.
bad and getting used to like I'm going to go back years later and be like, "Oh, that was not my best work." But that's okay. You got to get
Yes.
it out there. You got to start trying and just putting stuff out there. And the one thing that was always true is that it was true to who I was.
Mm.
Even if I don't agree with some of it anymore, like it's still like part of my existence, part of my journey in this whole writer's world. So no, I
Yeah.
completely understand like that intimidation. So I love the way you said it. You just got to start doing it. You got to start writing and such. So
Yes.
then so that also ultimately that's maturity, right? You eventually figure that out over time, that like just get to the end and then work backwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think like amateurs freeze and professionals stay in motion. It doesn't mean a
Mm.
professional writes everything perfectly. And that's, I think, the disconnect. It's like, no, you allow yourself to write badly. Because a fear I had was like someone was going to peek over my shoulder and go, oh, that's your process. You write badly first. And of course that never happens, but that's what you learn to navigate as a professional, is those kinds of little trip ups in your head. You really navigate yourself. It's not other people. It's those
Yeah,
voices.
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's so funny though, because like I've joked about, like, again, this is just comes with maturity and time, and maybe you hit it later in life, but um something that I've always said to friends is like, you're never going to get made fun of by someone doing better than you. If there actually is a person over your head that's making those types of comments, it's because in a way they're jealous of you, that you're able to do something that they can't do themselves.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyone that like knows what that's like is like, oh, I know exactly where he's going. Keep going, my
Totally.
friend.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That's funny. But yeah, no one more experienced than you or quote unquote better than you is going to look down on you like that. It's the people that are trying to come up that have that kind of jealousy, I think. Hmm.
Yeah. That's typically what happens. I mean, there's always exceptions to everything. Some people are just assholes, and that's,
That's
part of
true.
the game too.
Yes.
But generally speaking, even they can be successful and still be an asshole. So,
Yes.
but generally speaking, I have found in life is usually the person that's succeeding at where you want to go. They're they're too busy worried about what's in front of them to think about what's behind. And
Totally.
so the only people behind you are the ones trying to pull you back. So so you're writing, you're doing all this stuff, and then now you've entered into the podcast world.
Mm.
So tell me a little bit about like that pivot and like what kind of made you decide to start one in the first place.
Yeah. So it's called the Story Series, and it's funny, the name, the Story Series, I've had since working at Hasbro. My first job, I put something together while I was a temp called the Story Series, and it was like this after work hangout where people could brainstorm ideas together, and we had some executives come and give a talk, and it lasted like a couple months, and that was kind of it. And it was just this like fun little after work program that I put together. And so I've had that name since then. And uh about a year ago, I just guested on someone else's podcast that I didn't know. His name was Ryan Pyle, and he is here in Los Angeles, and we had this great conversation. And I saw his setup at home, and I was driving home, and I thought, okay, there's no more excuse. I want to do this, and so I started putting it together, and he was my first guest. I asked him. I said, "Hey, will you come on? And I'm doing this because of you." And so it started broad, and I'll just talk to anyone. And I like to read a lot of nonfiction, and so it was just an extension of just my curiosity of let me learn about different people. And then as it was going, I started to focus it more on like the ultimate resource for writers, and really put more of myself in it. I think that was part of the evolution, was being okay with putting myself a little more into that work and saying, yeah, I do have things I can say and impart on writers right behind me. And I have enough experience where I can pick it apart and say, hey, this you might find useful, and things like that. And so there was I think a confidence curve that I was developing just doing it. And that's where it's been going. And so now it's really writer focused, and I love it. I love this medium so much. I heard someone talk about podcasts as like the printing press for the mind, in terms of just getting information and learning, and yeah.
Well, I mean, first off, that's incredible. I've never thought about it like that, but it makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense, especially when you think about how people consume podcasts. And so for me, yeah, yeah, I've always found it funny that people get they get so consumed with like, I want to deliver not only an important message, but I want to deliver it this one way, and that's the only way it can be delivered.
Mm.
And they get so stuck in that, and then I find that to be limiting. Because at the end of the day, if you really truly believe in like the mission of what it is you're trying to accomplish, you should be open to all formats to get that message out there. Not all of them are going to be your forte, and that's okay too. But like, I
Right.
think you should be open to the concept that like you said, you have some wisdom you would like to impart on the world. This is a way to do that. It's outside of maybe your comfort zone as a writer, but it
Mm.
nonetheless provides you an outlet. And I have to wonder, does doing the show now inform anything you take into the writer's room? or vice versa?
Ooh, that's a great question. Yeah. So again, yeah, it's like documenting my learning at the same time because I'm getting people more experienced than me coming in and asking them all kinds of questions and learn. So one thing that was coming up, I was hearing over and over people talking about strategies pitching your TV show or movie or project, right? And something that was kept coming up across many guests was the power of character and how when you're putting a show together, a lot of people get tripped up in what's called world building, where they make this like really intricate world and they know everything about and all the details and this and that, but the characters are underdeveloped and that's a common weakness in pitches. And it's so something that was just across many guests that they kept talking about character. And so that's just something I'm like rolling around in my head right now as I'm like putting some of my own work together is like that emphasis on character first and who we relate to as the audience and why and the dynamics between the characters and how world building is important. But what is the thing that gets us to stay? And so it's just something that's just like an insight that's kind of came up recently.
No, I dig it. So if
Mm.
I'm a 22-year-old and I say, Brandon, I want to be a screenwriter, what would be your number one action for me to take?
Mm. Aside from write, which is of course you need to be doing that and let yourself write badly, which we covered. So I won't say that, but that is valid. I would say to try to get in the middle of it. The My biggest break, so to speak, came from being in an environment where people were doing what I wanted to do. And even though I wasn't as close to them immediately, like when I first got that job and it was this, that specific opportunity wasn't there yet for me, but I knew that I was in the right place and that there were people there that were willing to talk to me and help me. And so I think that made all the difference is just being in that environment. And so I think if you're, 20 something and you're trying to figure out what do I do and how do I build this thing is to find an environment where it's happening and just get in the middle of it as best you can, even if it's delivering mail or whatever. Just get in it.
Yeah, and learn by osmosis. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, Brandon. Well, I could continue this conversation. I love the kindred spirit of talking to another writer and doing that. I haven't got to do that in a while on this show. So, but alas, we come to the end. So, where can people find you? What you got cooking right now? What can people find you on? Plug it
Yeah.
away.
The Story Series podcast. You can get it on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or you could check out storyseriespodcast.com and it'll give you all the links and you can go from there. But yeah, Will, this is such a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate the chance to be here.
Well, I appreciate having you. And also, what do you have coming up work wise? I mean, you mentioned the car series. I want to plug too.
Oh yeah, so the Pixar movie Cars, obviously. So Disney Junior, we're doing a kids show, and so that was recently announced, and so all the voices are coming back, and it's going to be really cool. Short form series of the movie, and so that'll be out. Gosh, I don't know, maybe it's animation, so it could be like 2 years, but you'll
Okay.
start to
Oh,
hear
then no
more and more
worries.
about it, like as in the months ahead. But it's been announced, so you could read a little bit more about it now. Yeah,
All
yeah,
right, everybody. Well, Cars fans out there, stay tuned. Parents, keep in mind for your kids or for yourself for that matter. So, as always, be kind to each other, and we'll see you all next time.